Is it a gun that sucks balls?
I'm the farting demon in this relationship.
I'd be an awesome rich person.
You're both just an embarrassment.
God, I'm awesome today.
We're talking Tom Hanks and his vehicle.
Yeah, I had my finger in my mouth waiting for you to finish.
You gotta get 4 balls or something.
Like dick piercing?
No, you know damn well I'm fucking that demon.
Still sexy. How could that be close and not be
Yeah,
right?
I'll just kill some random dude.
His wishes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Plotty Time Minisode. This week, it's me, your boy, Poppascotch, and I'm going to continue the series that I started last week. I'm going to talk about my, I was going to say console history, but I guess my video game history, and just kind of, I don't know, informing the public where I kind of got this whole thing from. Maybe we'll connect some dots, maybe we'll see some correlations, maybe we won't, maybe I'm just going to talk to nobody for half an hour, 20 minutes, or whatever. Either way, I felt like talking it out, so I'm going to do that. Before I even get into this, though, go ahead and hit up our store, plottytime.com. Buy some merch there if you want. It redirects you to our eBay store, sure, but you can still buy stuff there. I just got the baseball shirt, which I love. The beanie's pretty solid, too. So, you know, check it out. There's mugs, there's water bottles, there's underwear. You can get a whole bunch of shit. Anyway, so what I want to talk about today, as the episode title says, is I'm going to talk a little bit about my arcade history. So for me, I kind of missed the big arcade boom. The moment before console gaming was really a huge thing. We're talking, you know, late 70s sort of, but it definitely into the 80s. The whole 80s had a big arcade scene that didn't really start to fade off much at all until Nintendo and Sega came out and became huge home draws, basically. But I mean, throughout the whole 80s and even into the 90s, well into the 90s, a lot of people still went to arcades, played a lot of great arcade games, maybe based on nostalgia, maybe not, maybe, there's a whole bunch of things it could be. So, like I said, I just kind of missed it. Like, when the arcades were really popping, like beginning 80s to mid 80s, I wasn't born. And then even into the late 80s, when there was still Nintendo and still things going on, and into the 90s, I was too young to like go to an arcade. And in the small town that all three of us grew up in, there was an arcade, and I remember there being an arcade, but I remember being so young that my parents would be like, there's no fucking way you're walking in there with like all those high school kids hanging out. It's not happening. So I forget the name of it. Maybe Dr. Scientist or Chump Slap. No, it was. I'll have to ask him what the arcade was in our town. But I remember exactly where it was. So I did remember, though, however, and this is speaking just in my town, but every year they'd have a community festival. And it was always the week after Labor Day, I'm pretty sure. Is that what it is? It might still be. But they had, at one point during the 90s, for sure, I remember this, they you know, it was like a community festival. There would be plenty of booths serving all kinds of food. You'd get, like, fire companies out there selling pizza. Another different fire company was selling a taco thing. The Lions Club had their ice cream sandwiches, they were like ice cream sandwiches with waffles. They're fucking awesome. And a whole bunch of different other people came out, vendors, food. There was music. And then for the kids, there was like a whole section that was just rides. You know, the traveling parking lot, smaller fair carnival things. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know exactly what I mean. So we had that. But I remember in the 90s, there was basically an army surplus tent. And when I say that, I mean it had like a ground you stepped on. It had, it was big. It was probably like 15 by 20 feet. That's conservative. It might be like 15 by 30 or 10 by 30. I don't remember exactly. I was a kid. This might be 30 years ago this happened. But I remember going into this army tent, which had the smell. Like, have you ever smelled that musty, moldy smell that comes from an old tent? Or just like old clothes, or there was like a dampness to it? Man, what a great time. But in this army tent, there was a whole bunch of arcade games. It was like a traveling arcade. They would just show up, I guess, wheel these off a truck, put them in this tent, plug them in, and kids could just throw quarters in these things. This was also when I discovered probably one of my favorite arcade games. There's a couple of arcade games I want to talk about that played important parts in my life or in my gaming history, but honestly, there's not as many as someone who would be like a hardcore arcade person. But the one I remember very fondly still to this day, is Rampage. You would climb Rampage, for those of you that don't know and only know it by the Rock starring vehicle, the Dwayne Johnson starring vehicle. It is a game where basically you play as one of the three mutants that are like Godzilla type, kaiju types. And one was a Godzilla, one was like a King Kong knockoff, and there was another one, I forget what it was, but maybe like a big Yeti or a big bear. I don't remember. But you would go to this, it was like a city, and there'd be certain amounts of skyscrapers or high rises. And basically you had to punch each section out, climb up it and punch it, and then you had to bring the whole thing down. And when you brought down every building, then you won the stage. Like there wasn't a lot to it, but it was a great game. You would sometimes punch like holes in the wall, and you'd see like a shower, and you'd eat it and spit it out. Sometimes you'd see like a woman, and you'd eat her and be like, oh, and then you'd get health. The army was there shooting at you. Helicopters were dropping shit on you. It was a lot of fun. It was a perfect arcade game where you could throw in a couple quarters, have a great time, and then move on. So Rampage, I mean, I remember seeing it at that festival. I remember seeing it in other arcades growing up. And it was always a great time. Fell in love with it. Still have the NES copy, by the way, which was almost a direct port, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's a great game. Another game really, really affected me, and one I definitely remember playing at the Community Festival tent, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. I don't know if they called it the arcade game. They might have just called it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because at the time there was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just the NES game, which we did talk about previously on this podcast in one of our very special episodes. You can go check that out. But I remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 was more of a beat-em-up. And I do remember them taking a port of that and putting it on Nintendo. And while the port was great, and the Nintendo version was great, the arcade game had better graphics, it flowed better, different enemies. I think it was shorter. I think there was a level or two that was not in the arcade version. But man, I remember throwing a lot of quarters. And it was one of those beat-em-up games where you can play as like a single player, and if someone wanted to join in, they could just put in their quarters and pick up player 2 on the thing. You could have up to 4 turtles. Worked out perfectly. So, the quarters I threw into that game. And I remember it. I'm sure if I saw it today, I'd be like, oh, that's slightly better than the NES home version I had. But I remember at the time, like, it was stunningly beautiful. It was amazing graphics. It looked so much better than anything we had at home. Like, far and away better. But if I looked at it now, I don't even want... Maybe I'll do that in another one. Just go back and look at... well, that's a good Minisode idea. Go back and look at old games I remember fondly with beautiful graphics and be like, So, I mean, what is there else to say about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2? It was fucking awesome. I kind of want to play it now. Anyway, that was a big one. And then there was another one which we had this game. There was a movie theater. The movie theater, I believe, still exists. At the Mahoning Valley Cinema. When it first opened up, there was an arcade next door. So it was like people could... be in this other small room right next to the movie theater, kind of dick around, wait for their movie or hang out after, whatever. But I remember this being the only place in my entire life I ever played a die-hard arcade machine. I didn't do much research into these. I don't know how prevalent or how rare they were, but I never saw them anywhere else. Now, the die-hard game, really, I don't remember any of the actual gameplay. I'm going to have to YouTube it. But I remember at the end of the level, when you beat the level, you'd be like running down a hallway, and then you had a quick time event, and you had to hit it and punch somebody, or you missed them. That's really the only thing I remember about it. But I remember it being so awesome because it was Die Hard. And there weren't any other Die Hard games, which you couldn't believe because Die Hard was an amazing movie. Still is. One of the best Christmas movies ever. And yes, it's a Christmas movie. Fight me. I wish I could remember more about it. Like, it's more about a feeling of just hanging out, waiting for a movie to start. I definitely remember, oh man, and I'm going to date myself here, but I remember going to see the movie. I think these were both on the same day, but I went to see Dark City. Hated it. Didn't get it. Didn't understand it at all. Then I was just confused. I remember playing Die Hard. I remember hanging out there, and then a bunch of my friends from middle school showed up, and they said, hey, we're going to go see Half Baked. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah. I talked to my parents, like, can someone give me a ride home? Yep. All right. Yeah, I'll stay. So we stayed and watched Half Baked as well. So I saw Half Baked in the theater when it came out. And the only reason why I didn't really care about it, I enjoyed it. I liked the movie. I still do. But at the time, I was like, I didn't really understand what a stoner comedy was. I just thought it was a comedy, you know? Like, where I grew up, drugs were bad. And no one did drugs, obviously. So to see a movie about drugs was about as illegal as it could possibly be. Talk about taboo. And then I remember watching it and being like, that's fucking it. So these guys, like, eat a bunch of food and act silly? That's what everyone's so... All right. And that just started my, nothing. So, moving on to arcade games. This is kind of like the early stages of my arcade love. And they came from the movie theater, the arcade next to the movie theater. They came from going to our local mall, the Lehigh Valley Mall, and playing, I want to say the arcade was named Time Out, but it might have been called Spaceport, because I tried looking it up, and there was one from the 80s that looked like the same front, but it said Spaceport, and I don't know if they kept that name or changed it, or maybe it's changed management. Who the fuck knows? It was so long ago. But I remember, like, my parents, there were 3 kids. My parents would go and drop us off at the mall, and we'd be like, all right, meet back here in 2 hours, and we'd all just go do our thing. And I remember going to the wall and looking at records, and I remember going to the arcade. And not like having $3. Like, it was gone in seconds. And then I just basically walked around and watched other people play games, which at the time when I was a little kid was also fun because everyone was better at the games than me. But I remember going there, and I remember playing a lot of games. And one of them, I don't know if it was there or if it was somewhere else, if I randomly came across it. But the game that a lot of people remember fondly, the Simpsons arcade game. If you don't remember this one, you should look it up because it was basically Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, but instead of 4 turtles, you were 4 Simpsons characters. So that was pretty cool just in its own because they all could kick ass. But then you could actually like team up. Like if it was 2 players and it was me and my friend Bob and I picked Bart and he picked Lisa, they could actually do a move where they teamed up and did like a super move. And it was great. I remember playing that game a lot, and I remember not being good at it and getting my ass beat. I looked up how much a cabinet costs. It's like $3,000 to $5,000. I forget exactly what. Nowhere near am I able to justify that purchase, considering what I could do with $3,000. So, man, but that'd be so fucking sweet to have. I would play the shit out of it for like 2 hours the first day and never touch it again. I guarantee you that's what I'd do. But I absolutely would get one of those arcade refresh things, like the arcade 1-up machines that they have in, they're selling them on Best Buy. I forget what company makes them, but I think someone's doing a Simpsons cabinet. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. But that would be fucking dope. And it'd probably be like $500. And I think I could swing that for it, maybe. Although that is another PS5. Doesn't matter. So, Simpsons game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Those were both great. Loved them. And in the Lehigh Valley Mall, the Time Out or Spaceport, whatever it was called, that is where I kind of like, I don't want to say leveled up, but all the games that we played as kids in the army tent and next to the movie theater, like they didn't change. They were the same every year. And I'm not saying they weren't great and they weren't fun, but when you went to the Lehigh Valley Mall in the chain one is where you saw like the newest, hottest games. Like I remember seeing Mortal Kombat 2 there, but I don't remember if I played that console first or saw it in the arcade. I think I saw it in the arcade first, but I remember playing the shit out of it at home, maybe a couple times the arcade. I don't have those fond memories of just like dropping quarters and like leaving them on the thing. Like I got next game. I want to kick everyone's ass. No, it's not. Like I was too young. Like I was way too intimidated. I was a child. I was maybe 10, so I didn't do that shit. But in that mall, I remember playing a lot of light gun games. There's 2 series that I remember very fondly. The first one is Time Crisis, and I remember I'm almost 100% sure it's Time Crisis. It may have been called something else, or I may be thinking of something else, but the point I'm getting at is the gimmick was you stepped on a pedal, and I don't remember if you stepped to hide or if you stepped to get out of cover. I think you stepped to hide. But basically, it's like a cover-based shooter that was very, very much first-person, very much on-rails light gun, and you'd like jump out of cover, shoot, get back in cover, reload, do whatever, jump, shoot, so on and so forth. And I remember if you timed it right, you could destroy the game. Like if you knew the animations and you knew when to hide, you could dominate it. So I mean, there were so many quarters dumped in Time Crisis. I'm pretty sure it was Time Crisis. And then the other, well, actually, there's another one I'm thinking of as I talk about this. But the other big one for me that probably played a much more prominent role in my life in video games and movies that I don't want to admit was House of the Dead. That game fucking ruled. It's an on-rails shooter. This is something that has been in arcades forever. But I remember it being like zombies, and they were relentless, and they would bite you, and you'd just be shooting. You'd have this like grindhouse type atmosphere of like these two cops getting to a mansion and just blowing away zombies. I remember, maybe it wasn't the first one, it might have been the second one or one of the later ones. I don't remember how many versions that came out of House of the Dead, but I do remember there being like alternate paths. Like if you shot a door, you could go through it and then you went that way, or you went to the left and went underground and under a bridge or whatever. Man, those games are fun. I wish they had more of those in VR, because I would love to play like a Time Crisis variant or House of the Dead. House of the Dead with VR would be sick. Maybe one day. I do remember them playing, or they came out with a motion controller one for PS3, which I still have. Ooh, I should break that out one day. Man, I'm getting so nostalgic. I wish I had time to do all this shit. God damn it. But, this isn't our primary source of income, so, I got to work hard for the money. That's how it is. But I don't want to take too terrible much of your time, but I also want to talk about another arcade game I loved. Two of them, actually. I just keep remembering these as we talk. But Area 51, guys. Area 51. I remember this being a very early light gun game. I remember you're in a truck. You're at a hangar. You're shooting aliens. You're trying not to shoot people. And the aliens look ridiculous. It's just bonkers insanity. It was like Mars Attacks the game. And I remember it being a shitload of fun. Everyone played it. It was very much, I don't want to say motion captured, but the animation style was, I don't know what they call it. Is it rotoscope? I don't remember. But the animation style like had pictures that were more like animated GIFs of like people, but they were like quote unquote, photorealistic for the time. So the graphics looked way ahead of anything else. I remember that distinctively. And I remember, like, you get later and you play another game, The Next Generation, where stuff gets kicked up, and you look back at Area 51, and it doesn't look nearly as visually impressive as I remembered it being. Because I did play it maybe 2-3 years ago at, what's that name? MagFest, Music and Gaming Festival in DC. They have a whole room that's just arcade games, and it's a great time. They're all free. You just show up and fucking play to hang out. It's great. So the other one that really played a big role was Terminator 2, another light gun on-rail shooter game. But the difference was it wasn't like a gun attached to a string that you shot off screen to reload. It was like an Uzi, and you had to look down the scope and shoot stuff. It was fucking awesome. And it was licensed. You were shooting, evil robots the whole time. It was just great. Everything about that game was great. And then I remember playing one of the Terminator games. It might have been for NES or Sega, but it wasn't the same thing, and I was really mad about it. I thought it was the same type of light gun game. I think maybe, don't quote me on this, this isn't going in the crevice, but I vaguely remember there being the Menacer for Sega. Was there a Terminator 2 you could use the Menacer on? I'm vaguely remembering that. I'm not going to look it up, but I'm pretty sure that is 100% accurate. Those are probably the most formidable games that I remember for the arcade. And I remember it being, like I said, I wasn't terribly into the arcades. I was born too late for like the Galaga, Missile Command, all those classic ones, or, Pitfall. I missed all those, but the games I did play, I remember loving. I remember them fondly. So how about, you guys get in touch with us. Tell us what arcade games you played. Put them down in the comments. Tell us about it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm misremembering something. Maybe you played more of, Double Dragon style. I don't know. I don't know what you guys are into. Tell us about it. Send those emails to plottytime@gmail.com. We have a 100% guaranteed response rate. We will 100% respond to the Gmail. I can't make that guarantee for Twitter or Instagram, but we will do it for Gmail. You can also head over to Twitter or Instagram @plottytime. You can head over to YouTube, like and subscribe there. It really helps us out. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.